Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is One Day Today, episode 144. It's getting close to 150. It's kind of crazy. We've had that many episodes, but I'm so glad to have you with us. I'm excited about our guest today, who you will meet in a moment. But first off, let's just say hello and just say, why are we here? What is one day? One day is a vision, is a mission of, what if we all were, intentionally in this world sharing our unique gifts? What if I would assert, and I say this a lot, but I would assert no matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe, what size, what color you are, you have something unique. You have something that can lift someone else up, that can empower. You have lessons, you have experience, you have gifts that that there's that others could receive, that can really empower and uplift people in your family, in your street, in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state, in your country, in your world. And I would say, what inspires me is what's possible when we and you and I and he and she all are choosing to live, to listen to our neighbor that way, to listen to ourselves that way. What could we create? What's possible in our world when we are standing on what's possible for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our families, for our world. And we this is a place for people who are up to leaders, who are up to things bigger than themselves. And I would say that in the obstacles that we face in our lives, usually on the other side of that, from all the guests we've had, all 100 and oh, I guess we've had well over 144 guests, because sometimes we have two or three guests per episode, but well over 200 guests we've had. One thing that, one commonality is, in order to discover who they really were, each guest had to face something, had to overcome something to discover their mission, their purpose, in contributing to something greater than themselves. And today is no exception. Before I introduce and welcome our guest Cheryl today, let's say hello to Matthew, our co-host.
Hey,
Aloha. How you
doing all
doing?
right. Say that again.
It's fun saying that, even though you're not in Hawaii. I still like saying aloha
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
to you.
it's like it's
Oh, I think
trying
you
to
cut
get
out for a second.
used to. Trying to get used to
You're
this
gonna
pace
cut
of
out for a
life.
second. Go ahead again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay. So yeah, just getting used to this pace of life here on the mainland has been more than a shock. It's incredibly different here compared to the islands, and there's a lot I can say to that, but it doesn't want to waste the time in case we get into it. Needless to say, it's been wild. It's been fun. It's been challenging. Sometimes it's been downright devastating and awful. But overall, I'm glad to be here. I'm very much looking forward to actually getting back into the groove, doing the virtual stage again. It feels like we've been missing quite a lot recently. Now, like, I've missed it too. So I'm glad to be back here.
Well, it's good to be back. Well, I think this is a good time. We'll share more about what's going on, but I think it's the perfect time to introduce our guest today. So everyone, please welcome to the stage Cheryl Ginnings. Hello,
Hi,
Cheryl. Welcome.
how are
Hi.
you?
Fantastic. And so happy to have you. And I just want to say, if you're ready, we want to just let you have at it. Are you ready, Cheryl?
All right. Well, I'm
All right.
excited to
Stage
be
is
here
yours.
with you, Abram and Matthew. In fact, my son's middle name is Matthew, so I'm really thinking about him while I look at you too. But I am a coach, an author, a speaker, but most of all, I look at myself as a mother of a son with severe cerebral palsy. And our son has been one of the most challenging things that we've ever dealt with in our lives, but he's caused us to grow more and to learn to love more than any other thing in our lives too. I meet people all the time who are feeling like they're insecure if something happens in life and they feel like I can't do this, and they wonder why did things happen to me, and they get hung up sometimes on some of the problems that they go through in life. And we're seeing a change, I think, in our society where a lot of people are giving up. They feel like they have no hope. And I especially see this with our young people when we're having such high suicide rates, and also in the military. You know, they've done so much for our country, and yet they feel like their life is not worth anything. And I look at parents and I see that they are so lost so many times. They're not sure what they're doing. They're raising children, but they're not really having a good solid relationship with them, and the high divorce that we have. And this is especially true when you look at families who have special needs children. And I have made it my mission that I want to help families to be able to work together and learn how to solve some of those problems by learning communication triggers and find out what it is that caused them to get angry, to get upset, to explode, to give up on each other, or to feel like there's really no hope in our relationship, because that's just really not true. It's a belief that some people have because they've grown up with watching so many people just go, okay, this is too hard, I'm leaving, I'm out. And they feel like they can't deal with life and what's going on. I have to say that next month we celebrate our 57th anniversary. And one of the biggest things that when people meet us and they talk to us, I remember a couple of girls that we met in California when we were traveling, and they said, "Are y'all married?" And we said, "Yes." And at that time it was like a little over 50 years. And they said, "What? We've never known anybody that lasted that long." And I have to say that the reason we're together, the reason we have done everything we can do for our son and continue to do, is because of our commitment and love that we have for each other. We knew when we got married that it was for life. We just knew that if anything happened, we were going to learn how to work it out. And that's been our philosophy all along. You know, we are always growing. We make a lot of mistakes. We have to have a lot of forgiveness in life, but that's okay. None of us are perfect. And so when I meet people that are throwing away a good relationship because they've hit a hard time, I just want to help them to see, you know, if you think that leaving that situation is going to make it easier in life, then it's not going to happen. You're going to carry those same issues with you no matter where you go. And this is one reason why I work so hard to try to help parents who have special needs children to see the hidden gems in their child, to find things that they didn't know were there, and to look for the things that they're good at instead of always focusing on what's wrong, what they need to improve. And one of the things that I've got to offer you is that I'm going to give you a gift of a workbook that is to try to help you find those hidden gems in your own child's life, if you'll stay with me to the end of this, because I really am passionate about helping our children reach for the stars, to do the best they can do. And I had a good friend who's been gone now for several years, but she taught her young people in her English classes to say arete, go above and beyond. Don't be vanilla. Don't stay in just the ordinary. Reach out and excel, push yourself, find the things that are good, try new things, and you'll find that life is so much better for you. But when you sit around and you don't do anything, or you're just on your technology all the time, you're missing a lot when you don't have relationships with people, when you don't know how to sit down and communicate and to really talk to each other. So I have a little class that I'm starting in about a week. And if you're interested, I know if you're watching this, it's either on Facebook or on YouTube, then just let me know that way, or go to cheryl-coaches.com, because that's where we're going to have people go to find a way to sign up. But it will be something to try to help you transform the lives of your family, to find ways that you can communicate with each other, communicate with your family members, your extended family, who are sometimes offering advice that you didn't want, or advice that you just feel like that doesn't fit your situation. And it's also a challenge when we're trying to work with educators, and they may see our child one way and we see them totally different in a 24/7 environment. But learning how to work together, where all of us work together, where it's the family, it's the people who work with us in the medical field, it's the people who work with us in education, and it's our extended family and friends, that we learn to work together. And that is going all the way back to communication. You know, one of the things that happens when a child is born, it's like going on a trip, and you've prepared for this. You've been excited. You've been waiting and waiting. You're saving your money, and you're thinking, oh boy, I'm going to get to go to Italy, so I'm going to learn some of the language. And then you get all packed and you're ready to go, and you've got your tour books with you, and you're looking excitedly for this trip. And you get on the plane and you go to sleep, and when you wake up, they're saying, okay, we've landed. And you get off and you're in Egypt. And you're thinking, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know how to speak the language. I don't know how to get a cab. I don't know how to get around here. I don't even know what I'm going to see while I'm here. But guess what? The plane's gone and you're there. And there's no leaving where you are. So you've got to figure out now, what am I going to do? How am I going to make the best of what my situation is? And I want to give you some tips today that will help you in dealing with, no matter what your challenges are, that are going to help you in making your life better, because you can't change what's happened, but there are some things you can change. And so that's what I want to focus on. So the first thing I want you to remember in your communication is learning to be bold, learn to speak up. You know, so many times people either don't know what they want, or they have no idea what it is that is going on. They're being talked to in a way that they don't understand. They're afraid to ask a question. They don't want to look dumb. And maybe that's a doctor. They've told you, okay, this is the diagnosis. And if it's like me, guess what? I had doctors that started talking to me with terms I didn't understand either. And I asked questions. And even when they said, oh, Miss Jennings, you're just a new mother, you don't understand, I didn't give up. What I did was I tried to research and find out what they're talking about. I asked questions. I pushed the buttons. And when they didn't answer me right, I broke down and cried one time in the doctor's office. And I said, the doctor doesn't tell us anything. And it was a different doctor that was there that day. And you know what he said to me? That pediatrician said, change doctors. If you can't talk to one, find one you can talk to. And we changed. And he, even though he didn't know what was going on, did not understand, he was able to tell us in a way that was not offensive. He said, I don't know what that is. I'll have to study it. But he did. And then when we said, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to talk to our son? We didn't know what cerebral palsy was. We didn't know what seizures were. We didn't know what anything was or what to expect. He said, well, I don't either. I'll find out. And that's the kind of person that you want to go to help you move forward. But learn to speak up and ask those questions, and don't take no for an answer. If you believe in your child, there's something there that they're not seeing, good for you. You're a good parent. That doesn't mean that somebody's right, somebody's wrong all the time. It means that sometimes the people who are authority figures, like a doctor, is giving you the best to their ability to tell you what's going on. But sometimes you've got some that have a pretty big ego, and I've met some of those people, and they want to tell you that the way they tell you is like the only way that things can be, and that's not true. So I want you to find somebody to be able to relate to. And the next thing is to learn to live one day at a time. You can't go back in life. You can't change what's happened, There is no plane leaving this area. And so I want you to think of, just don't look backward to dwell on why did this happen, because even if you know, you still have something to do. And that is the third thing, your attitude. Your attitude may be the only thing that you can change in your circumstances. But let me tell you, your attitude either makes you a better person because you're going to learn how to deal with problems. And problems are just things you haven't dealt with before. And you're going to learn how to deal with it. You're going to find solutions, and you're going to become resilient in with the way you face the future problems. Or you choose to become a very bitter person that people don't want to be around because you're always negative. You're bringing things down, or you're crying around about, why me? Why did this happen to me? And nobody wants to deal with that kind of person. The next thing is a K stands for knowledge. It's up to you as a parent to figure out what it is that you can do with your child and what needs to happen, and then to learn to work together. And that's where I come in. I help you work together as a couple to try to find ways that you can agree that you're going to move forward, because sometimes we're just not knowing what each other's thinking. We grieve in different ways, so we misunderstand each other. And that's easy to do. So we're going to work on that. And then the next thing is an E, and it stands for, I want you to encourage each other. Learn how to look for things that are good. Don't dwell on the negative things in each other, in your other children, in this child. You're going to look for the good things. And those are the hidden gems. And guess what? I have a son that is so disabled, he cannot even open one hand. And he cannot do anything for himself. He never could. He hardly could feed himself after many years of working with him. And yet, guess what happened? We had a therapist that worked with him, and he paints. And his art ended up in 14 Southern dental clinics years ago when he was down in South Texas. And they are also hanging at the University of Washington Medical School in Seattle and other places. And Texas A&M honored him as a special artist. And we had the opportunity to put his art in a show in a museum where we live. And they were thinking, what are we doing? Nobody knows who this is. Why are we doing this? And guess what? Over 200 people showed up to see his work, and some had not seen him for 17 years. Now imagine, they came not knowing what was going to happen, because we saw and others saw something that could change his life. It gave him a good feeling of knowing he had done something, and people wanted to buy everything that he was doing. You never know what's hidden in your child. I want to offer you the opportunity to take a class or go and pick up a book, a little booklet, ebook on my website, cheryl-coaches.com. And I want you to learn how to look for the good things in your child, even if they're not disabled, even if they are not special needs. We as parents need to focus on the positive things and to quit looking at the negative things, but to learn ways to improve each other's life. Focus on the things we can encourage each other, spend that time getting to know them, talk to each other, and let each other know that you love them and that you're supporting them. And I'll tell you what, you will hold that family together. If you'll practice these things, you will be able to make the change in your family that will hold that family together. If there's any way that I can help you, I hope you'll reach out. Let me know what it is that you need. And if I can't help you, I'm really good at being able to find somebody else that might be able to be just the person to solve the problems that you have. Thank you for letting me be here today. I'm so happy to be able to be here with Abram and Matthew and with you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing. I love your attitude, first of all, but I love, I really hear your commitment to your child, but also just how you hear the gift in everyone, and how and I love it because I feel like special needs children, societally are a lot of time overlooked, and
They
I
are.
feel like there's so many unique gifts that we overlook in special needs children. And I have, in my extended family, uh, there's one of the cousins is Down syndrome, and he's so patient and loving with everybody, and it's
Right.
just like we all could learn from him. And it's like but I love it. It's like how you have, you know, your commitment to just to hold the space for the gift that, the gifts of all. And it's just something we can't get enough of. I think
Oh, thank
there's so many gifts that are overlooked, and I hear that you just you hold that space for the gifts of all, and I just acknowledge you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And Abram, that reminds me, I was hosting a radio program, and one of the people I interviewed had 6 boys, and then along came a little boy with Down syndrome. And she said those other brothers absolutely loved him so much. And one day, a little boy that was 6 years old came in, he hugged his mother, and he said, "Thank you for having him. He is
Mm.
so sweet, and we just love him." And I think we miss sometimes the opportunities to see the joy and the love, because we see a wheelchair, we see a walker, or we see somebody we think they can't talk because they don't use their arms or their legs or something, and has nothing to do with their minds. And it's about time we open up and say, hey, there are a lot of people in a wheelchair that know a whole lot more than maybe I do, and have even written books. So yes, let's look for the good. And thank you for letting me be here to share that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many questions, but like before I get into that, first of all, I want to make sure you guys can still hear me okay. Are we good?
Yeah, we hear you.
So just for anyone watching either now or later on, I got stuck in a coffee shop today, so that's where all the background noise is coming from. I apologize. I first of all, I want to echo what everyone said. Just like thank you for actually showing up for your child. I know so many people who they get stuck in this mindset of, oh, they're never going to be able to survive in this world, and they just that's all they can see. All they can see is someone who's just injured and can't take care of themselves, and like they have this preconception, this idea that's already in their head that like there's nothing the kids can ever be able to do. They're just going to be a burden their entire life, and it just becomes this like ongoing, like it's like a stone rolling downhill. It seems to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And like you have either you were never in it or you completely stepped out of it. And I'm curious which, like if that kind of started that way and then like you kind of rolled out of it, or if you saw it from the beginning as an opportunity to grow and learn and actually give something.
Matthew, that's a good question. And let me just tell you, from the beginning, he couldn't hold his head up. He couldn't sit up. We couldn't prop him up for 2 3 years. I mean, it was a long time to even prop him with pillows and him to stay put. We had to do a lot of holding. And when you're holding somebody like that all the time, it was normal for us to be hugging and kissing on him. Anything he did, if it was a tiny little moving his hand to make something happen, like a dowel rod, and make a little wooden ring, drop down and ring a bell. We acted like that was the biggest thing that could have ever happened. But along the way, we've had a lot of tears. We have dealt with doctors who said, "Boy, forget you ever had him. Have other kids and just don't worry about him." That absolutely just made me cry. And I was like, how can you say that? He was 2 years old when we were told that. And this doctor tried to keep us from getting him into a school we had moved across country to get. But thankfully, the others said, we'll let him in anyway. But all along, we fought battles, and we've had to deal with even assaulting that happened to him in a group home just a few years ago. And it made me so angry that I I turned it in to every agency to try to get help, but I loaded up my car. I put in every agency, every group home, everything that I could possibly look for. And I said, I will find another place for him. It's just amazing what parents go through to try to get the help that they need. My health broke down. I cannot lift him. I can't even now physically pull his body up in the wheelchair right. But what happened was God opened the door for me, because I went out of town about 200 miles, and I thought, no matter how far it is, I'm going to find a good place for him that I will go back and forth no matter how often it is. I looked at 14 companies, and none of them were quite right. And at the end of that time, the man that started with me said, you didn't find what you were looking for, did you? And I said, no. They were all better than what we had. I cried when I saw they could put a list of food specific for each child, because ours was being starved. And I could not believe the difference in there. But he said, well, there's one more choice. And there was a couple who had taken care of a little boy for 9 years. He was expected to live 2 when they took him. He lived 9 years. And they said he died, and they've been grieving. And I don't know if they'll help you or not. We went and met them next week. Guess what? They have been part of our family. We took him, said we want him for the rest of his life. And I said, oh no, I'm not giving my son away. And here we were sitting at their little house, and it was a tiny house. Okay. They had 3 little children, 3 bedrooms, and they were going to give 1 to our son. And when he moved there, those little children said, we want to sleep with Blake. They moved their pallets under his bed to sleep by him. And they've grown up with our son in their home. And they've been able to they built a home that was handicapped accessible. I cannot believe how God has blessed this family, but they've made sure that he stayed connected to his sisters. And I know that there are so few people that see what you're seeing about the positive things that you can get from having someone with problems. But don't we all have something we're dealing with? If it's not mental or physical, just think when it's your turn to take care of a parent. If your parent doesn't remember who you are, that's going to be hard too. And I've had relatives who actually said, oh, that's not my mother anymore. She can't remember me. Well, yes, she is your mother. And I think our attitudes have to become, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to find a way to make this work, no matter what happens. I could fill your week with stories of things we've had to go through to overcome hardships. But the thing is, I've never given up, and I will not give up. I am a very resilient person, and it came from having to fight these battles and to learn how to solve a problem, because these problems that families are going through are really tough. And we're actually dealing with a real tough one now. Our son's wheelchair should have been able to be replaced after 5 years. We started in March when he was supposed to be able to have a new one. It's falling apart. He cries every day because the back is broken, the seat's broken. It's causing sores on his bottom. The cables are breaking, his feet fall down. And do you know what the process is going to take? About 5 more months to get this chair. We've got to improve the situation for everybody. And that's part of what makes my mission so important, is teaching people this is what's happening. That's not what you think is happening, but this is what's happening. So there is something we can do about it, and that's what I want to see happen. And I've just been invited to go to Paris, France in November to speak there on a program about autism. And I'm hoping to work it out by doing it virtual, because I just don't have the money to go there. But boy, what an exciting thing to think we're globally affecting the world by making changes. And if we improve the world to take care of each other, wouldn't that be great? I mean, just, it's my dream.
It's beautiful. I'm not surprised at all. As soon as you said you're resilient, I already knew it. I could tell, and I could tell your passion and your commitment to, empowering, the children of the world, and I
As
think
children of the world.
it's 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 a it's a as soon as I said that, I in my mind, just "We Are the World" just started playing in the background of my head.
Me
We
too.
are the children, and it's a beautiful thing, and I think, I mean, as it's kind of mentioned a few times, it's so overlooked, and there's so many versions of this where we overlook the, I mean, the way I put it is the divine expression of the universe in every person. How we all have the ability, you know, just no, there are no exception to this in my experience. At least when we choose and when we let our gifts come forward, when we actually have the courage to face ourselves. But there are so many people, you know, and children that we just kind of say, "Oh, that one's a dud. That one has got nothing to contribute," and we listen to them as not being able to bring anything to society, bringing anything to ourselves, and it's such a transactional way that we it's how do you put it? There's no, it's not acknowledging what's the possibility of, just like for your child with the art. It's just like we all have so many things that we can do and that we can't even imagine, because we're thinking of it, as Matthew put it, like a preconception, as, oh, they're not well, they're damaged or whatever, that we don't even consider how the lessons and the beauty that they can contribute to us. And it's like, that's, I resonate with that deeply. I could tell you my personal story as why, but it's like I feel like we do that with others, but we also do that with ourselves. That, we give up on ourselves or as much as we give up on others.
I think our world has given up hope that things can be better. And that
Yeah.
hope is what people have to have even when their child is born, and has any kind of problem. You've got to have the hope, to hang on to. That's what I want people to understand. There is hope. And as long as parents will get out there and 5 years ago, he was hanging on life and death. Our son was he had lost weight. They couldn't figure out why. They thought, okay, we'll put a feeding tube in. We'll be an overnight, in and out. Guess what? That doctor walked in that waiting room and said, it's the hardest surgery I've ever had to do. And we were like, what? And he said, Blake's heart and his stomach are connected. And I've tried to work around that, and I've punctured him, and he's in ICU. Well, he laid in ICU a few days, and he was getting worse and worse. So they said, okay, we've got to go in and try again. We'll try to put a stent in and hold it open. He went in and he punctured him a little more. And about 3 days later, in the ICU room, we're sitting around there just not knowing what's going to happen, 8 tubes in and out of his body, and he's barely alive. And in walks this smart aleck hospitalist who goes, here, I need you to sign this DNR right now. And I went, what? We haven't talked about that. We can't do that until we've talked about that. I need to talk to the doctor. And she said, you don't have time. Look at him. He has no quality of life. Just like that. Mm-hmm. I know if I had signed those papers, my son would not be alive today. Mm-hmm. I am out to change the way medical people see our bodies, to not say, I know what's going to happen and here's what's going to happen, and that they think they're the only ones that are right. I mean, that was the most devastating thing. We ended up in a few days being transferred to another hospital. 5 heart and lung transplant doctors worked on him 5 hours. They had to open him totally up from his arm to his waist and across, open up his chest and peel off all of the bile that had attached, like an orange peel, give him a body wash, and then sew up all of the holes that they had punctured in him to get him well. 10 weeks. Wow. We did not leave him. 10 weeks. We went thinking overnight, and he was in there for 10 weeks. But he's alive. And during that time, Abram, guess what? I was sitting there one afternoon at the foot of his bed, and he was asleep. And when he woke up, he saw me, and I had tried not to cry in front of him. And he looked at me, and I mean, this is a nonverbal person, okay? He looked at me and he said, "Mom, you okay?" I jumped out of my chair and I went running over to him, hugging him. I said, "You've never asked me how anybody was in your life. Why are you asking about me? You're the one laying here in this bed." I mean, it was just such an amazing thing that happened, to see him thinking about me. I mean, I didn't know he could do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't end. We keep giving hope to people as long as they're there. He'll be 53 right away. People would not have thought he'd live that long. But he is such a sweet person. He is so kind, and he's a gentle person. And we fight all the time the little rules and regulations that people come up with to make it harder for people that are at home being cared for. Please help me change that. If there's anybody listening that can help us change that, we've got to quit making up rules that make it hard. You know, it's amazing. But I know I've gone over your time, but I have.
No, you're
being
perfect.
here. To be here.
You spring up such an amazing, like so many profound points, but it's just beautiful what you just shared about how he's the one laying in the hospital bed, showing compassion for you, and it's just like it's again, it's one of those gifts that you wouldn't know unless you looked. And I think one of the things I'm hearing in all this is, just speaking about how we listen to others, but also to ourselves, is the willingness to be surprised that a person or a life or situation is not going to play out how our thoughts and our preconceptions dictate. And
That's right.
when it's like I feel like medical field is, I mean, it's a biased opinion in my opinion, but it's like the medical field is very guilty of this, how this is the way it is and this is the only way it can be, and it's like there's no other options, and it's just like these are the cold hard facts and this is the way it is. And it's like we've had so many guests in the last few weeks, including one who had amazing story, who had Mark Rodriguez, who had 2 lung transplants, and there's the same story of the doctors giving up on him and just basically saying this, it just saying how it's supposed to be, and it's unfortunate because it's like we're like telling people how to live and how to die, and not actually allowing space not only to be surprised but to
encourage families, to encourage them. When a doctor tells a family at birth, your child is never going to walk and never going to talk, put them away, forget you had them, they don't know what that parent can do to make that different. And that's the determination that a parent that has hope can do. And that's why I want people to see, don't give up hope at the beginning. And when you don't give up hope, guess what? You can work things out. But if you go home and you think, "Oh, that's the only authority in my life and he's given up," then the parents feel hopeless. We've got to change that.
And that's exactly it, Cheryl. And that's what I hear. Like I hear and I see in who you're being is you're being that space that allows your son to be nurtured, to be his own beautiful expression. And you don't let anything, you allow nothing less than that. You don't listen to him as limited, as finite, as you can only do this and you're stuck like this. It's like you listen to him as just the infinite possibilities. And I think that's a lesson that we all could learn, is just who you're being, is you're giving the space, contrary to a lot of the doctors we've talked about, a lot of people who sign people off, is you're listening for his greatness. You're listening for his gifts. When society and doctors are almost all but put them on mute, any possibility other than what they think might happen based on their preconceptions. And it's just beautiful that who you're being is holding that space, and
Well, I
it's
don't
just
want to
inspiring.
leave the impression. I don't want to leave the impression that I don't appreciate doctors. I've got lots of doctors that have
Oh,
been good
of
friends.
course.
But what it is to not allow the limited knowledge that somebody has to limit the life of another person,
Right.
because they only know what they've gone through school and what they've allowed themselves to continue education. And my doctor early on said, Cheryl, we just weren't taught everything. And I appreciate him for telling me that, because he was open to help us find another way to deal with Blake. And it meant we moved. But guess what? If we hadn't, we would have never found people that could teach us something to be able to help our
Right.
child. And that's where parents have to be open to be taught too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'd like to change gears a little bit. I wonder, I don't even know if this is a question that is possible for you to answer, but I'm very curious, like, if you can speak to Blake's experience. Like how much do you know about how he experiences the world? Have you been able to talk about this or communicate this in any way? Like, where exactly do you feel like he's at?
The only thing I can tell you is that I can only watch what he does and what he responds, sometimes with his facial expressions. I mean, when we get on the phone with him, and we're looking at him on a FaceTime. But the first thing he wants to know, and probably 5 times last night, he said, when you come back, when you come back. And all he wants to know is, are you coming back? And at first it used to really, I cried every time he asked me that, because I thought, he's unhappy. He's not gonna be able to manage being away from us. And yet I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't change that. But then I realized, no, he loves us. And he just wants to know, you're coming back, aren't you? And if he can come and be with us for a little while, he's ready to go back to his house where he lives with them. But I think watching him, I can see how they have treated him like he is a gift. Okay. They cater things. They take him, they've had to buy a van. It was expensive, but they bought this van so they could take him places. He goes with them to their little kitchen where they cook. And then they go, okay, Blake, you make sure everybody's doing their job. And they treat him like he's the one in charge. He responds to this. They treat him like, okay, you're mad, aren't you, Blake, when things go wrong with his wheelchair or with the bed or something. They feel the things he's feeling so they can help him express himself. That's wonderful. I've seen him tell me more about what he's thinking by watching him with them than I have for a long time, because he's quiet. And when people don't talk you can sit with him for 2 hours, he may not ever say a word, but he knows what's going on. And you know what he loves most besides his daddy? He loves ball games. And he understands. He can watch a ball game and he'll go, Dad, touchdown. He knows what's going on. Or he loves Rangers. And we've paid for them to go take him to see the Rangers game before, whenever they can, because he loves that so much and they're willing to do that. But there's a lot more in there than I'll ever know of what he understands. And we were told at the beginning, the day we moved him from one house to the other, he was 41. I got an envelope in the mail that night that said where he had been in this group home. They thought he was like a 2-month-old. I was bawling my eyes out. The same night, the next day, this little one that takes care of him was working with him on homeschool type stuff that she'd done with her kids. And she said, Blake is so smart. Did you know that he can add in his head? And I was like, what? No, I didn't know that. So 2 different people seeing the same person. Wow, what a difference their views are. That's why I say you can't give up, because the person telling you to give up may have such limited knowledge and limited experience. They have no idea what's hidden away in there. So keep on keeping on.
Yeah, this is actually something we talk about a lot. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And also, one other quick question: is there a place that we can go to look at some of his artwork?
Oh, I would be glad to put that on his on my. I'll do that. I'll put that on my Cheryl-coaches.com because I've actually got some pictures that were sold. He sold 30 paintings the day that his art opened at the museum. And by the end of the month, he had sold 40. And that museum said, we've never sold more than 2 in 6 months of any artist who's ever been here. And they were afraid nothing was going to happen when he was there. They made a lot of money. But yes, I would be happy to do that. I will put some on there, Matthew. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, that would be great. I very much appreciate it. I'm really curious to see it too, actually. And going back to kind of earlier topic, we were talking about these preconceptions that people get stuck in, and they let those ideas dictate their behavior and their choices. Um, what are some things that you have been forced to change in your life your because of your situation with Blake
Because of
that has
my
actually improved? Yeah, that has actually improved your life. That has changed the way you think for the better.
Well, one thing we've always lived around what's best for him, where he needs to be to get the care. There are places we would have liked to have gone through the years to live or to try to do things that we were limited. But the thing that always amazed me were the people that we would be around would teach us things. Like, I changed my thinking when he was little and he couldn't sit up. So he was laying on the floor, just he would lay on the floor a lot. And when we had our little girl, uh, she was only a few months old and she was sucking on her bottle and she went over, just sat down on his stomach. And when she did, I was like, no, 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 get off. And the lady that was there visiting me that helped with the day program said, don't do that, honey. You let him learn to push her off because he needs to learn the skills to defend himself. I didn't know that. And then she said, his sister will be the best teacher he'll ever have. And guess what? She was. She was his imagination. I fell off a ladder, fell right onto a stake holding concrete and split my heel bone. I ended up in the hospital and then I was in this big old cast. I couldn't do anything. And up to that point, it said, don't let him roll over and try to sit up, keep him down. Well, I couldn't get up and make him lay back down. And while I was recovering, our little girl that was about 2 years old would say, come on, Blake. She got him to roll over, to sit up like a W, his legs were out to balance him. And he was so excited about it. And, I told you one hand didn't work. He would put the other hand between his legs like this. And when he bounced up, he kind of raised his bottom up off the thing. He realized he could move. She taught him in that 6 weeks or 6 months, I guess, that I was down and couldn't move him around or at all. She taught him to climb up 2 steps out of our garage room that we'd made, hop through the house to get to their bedroom where they both stayed, open the closet, and they would both get inside the closet. We almost couldn't get him out because his legs had to be unfolded to get him out. They had the happiest time. I think we don't realize how important our spouse, the children are, the siblings that I'm trying to think of. Anyway, the siblings need to be treated as if they were the teachers, as if they were important. And then you won't have the jealousy. That's another thing that was such a big learning lesson. You just get them involved in it, and guess what? They will be so happy because they see that what they're learning, they can teach the one that's maybe got disabilities that is older than them, but they feel important and they want to help. So that's another thing that's so much fun about having Blake and having his sister. I mean, she's always been, such an important part of his life. In fact, he's got 2 sisters. Is there
Well,
anything else
I
that
love
you?
it. Well, sure. Just as we're completing here, I mean, I'm just moved by just all the story, all these stories. It's beautiful, and I guess I want to like look forward to the future. You know, the future that you're creating as a leader, and you know, all what your mission and vision of what you're creating. It's inspiring, and you know, I just want to like look forward. You know, however many years in the future, you know, what does it look like when the world, when, you know, when doctors have overcome, not all doctors, I'm speaking very specifically to like those preconceptions, but when we've moved past those preconceptions, when we are celebrating and acknowledging the gifts of every child, of every person, you know, and you know, when people aren't overlooked for their handicaps, but are just celebrated and seen as their gifts and their, you know, the beauty and the wisdom they share. And you know, sometimes it's spoken, sometimes it's unspoken. But like, what is it like? What do you see in the future? Like, what does the world look like when we are on that? You understand my question? Does that make sense?
I do, and I'm just thinking, why don't we see that now? Why do we try to compartmentalize people from race and from gender, from whatever? You know, why don't we just see people as friends? Why don't we just see them as somebody I haven't met yet? You know, you're 2 friends I hadn't gotten to know before, and yet I love you both. You know, I am so excited that I get to be with you on this program. But you see a vision of people being able to accept one another. I mean, so what if somebody needs help? Don't we want to stop and help an older person get across the street? I hope so, because I'm getting there. But you know, I see that when people can actually just look at each other on what can I do for them, and even if you've reached the end of what you can do for them, don't tell them there's no hope. Don't take away the thoughts that they may have of what they'd still like to accomplish. You know, I was looking at a picture today of somebody who's fighting cancer, and she was feeling hopeless, and they were saying, please send good messages to this person. She's young. We never know how long we're going to be here. We don't have any lease on life. Why do we treat ourselves as if we're going to be here and be more important than somebody else? We're not. We're just one person helping another. And look at our neighbors. You know, what can we do that would help them? If they are caring for an older person, you know, did you know that caregivers that are caring for somebody in their home will die 67% faster than the person that is being cared for? Think about that. And if you're over 70, it's more likely that 70% faster the person that's the caregiver will die before the person being cared for. That's another thing I'm really, you know, trying to help people understand. I did not know how to take care of my own health. I did not understand that. Nobody was thinking that way when I was young. I will be 77 in September. So, I mean, I'm going back a ways. But now I know older people often put off going to the doctor for themselves because they think, well, they need me. And when family members are being cared for, we forget to ask, is there anything I can do for you, the caregiver? Can I come with sit with somebody for an hour, read to them, tell them jokes, listen to music with them, anything to allow a caregiver a little bit of time to just be alone? Do you know how much that would save lives? I mean, think about it. To save lives by being kind, it's time to see the world in a way that we can say, what can I do for somebody else, instead of what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? That's our world is so full of themselves, and we're looking after people who don't need to be looked after. They need to get to work so they feel good about themselves, because there's a lot of people that can never work and they will always be cared for. And we need to take care of them and not people that could just get a job. And my goodness, aren't we happier when we have things to do? I believe we are. So, you know, if we can say, yes, I feel good about being able to speak, being able to write, being able to take care of somebody. And I think that's when we have the good feeling about what we're doing in life, is when we are serving other people. And that's one thing that helped me the most. When our son first had to leave home, it was because they thought I had cancer and I was young, and I had to immediately be cared for. I was so ill. And when we left home, I closed the door and cried. I couldn't answer the phone. I didn't want to talk to anybody because it was as if he was gone. And yet I knew I was going to see him every couple of weeks. But I know that's how other people feel when they're able to do what they want to do. I mean, it's just, we've got to get over that. The thing that helped me the most, though, was when I would do something for another person, visit somebody that was close to me, if it was on the phone. And at that time, we didn't have the computers and we didn't have cell phones or anything. Look after somebody else and you'll live longer.
It's beautifully said. And I think I appreciate you saying that. And I think I know we're all on our own journey, we're like individually and collectively. And I feel, in our experience, in our life experience, at some point, we go through the valleys and mountains of our lives. And at some point, I feel like we discover that fulfillment comes not from, material possessions or temporary pleasures or being walled off from fear, but the true,
Right.
true fulfillment comes from what we uniquely have, the gifts we uniquely have, how we can give those gifts to others. And
Absolutely.
I don't know if there's an exception to that, but I just feel like that's what you're touching on. It's like we all have a choice in every moment, and who we choose to be in this moment, and there's different ways. Sometimes it's making someone smile. Sometimes it's making someone laugh. Sometimes it's being a generous listener to someone who's having a hard time, or maybe it's talking someone off a ledge, literally, but it's who we can be and who we choose to be in the moment. That's where we find fulfillment. Where I felt the most fulfilled, on purpose, when I could, make a difference for someone in ways beyond I could even imagine. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. It's we get to choose in every moment, how to love, how to bring beauty, how to bring joy, how to bring laughter, how to bring wonder in the infinite ways we can. And I feel like that's the opportunity in every moment, and especially in every obstacle, especially when someone's having a hard day, and that was what was so, we would say, the collateral beauty of the pandemic was, while we saw humanity suffering, on a large scale, it was an opportunity for us to bring joy and to compassion in a way that, at least in my life, I had seen. Yeah. So I really just...
Yeah, it became a different world, but there are a lot of good things that have happened. I know at first it was hard on families to have their kids home, but the good thing was they've learned, what the kids can do, and learn to communicate now. I mean, they've had to, or else they've got a lot of problems. But they really have had to learn how to get along in a family again, eat meals together, to do things where they couldn't go out. And so maybe we needed that time to focus on the family again. And we don't have to have a crisis to do that. We just need to make up our minds that it's more important to be able to serve one another and to find out, one of the things that I know we got to eat, but one of the things I've found that is so sweet about a family that has several kids, every evening they eat together. They go around the table and they ask the children, each one at a time, what was a hard thing that happened today? And what could you do differently next time that happens? To try to get them to focus on things that don't always go right. But if something went wrong, what could they do different next time that thing happened? If it was somebody being ugly to them, or they saw something happen that they didn't know how to handle, it gives them a way to think of that. And then what is a good thing that happened today that we can celebrate and we can be happy about and we can be thankful for? And teach your children, life isn't always good. We have ups and downs. Every one of us does. So don't look at life like that's the end of the road because something happened. No. Yeah, it may be a tough time and you may be bawling your head off for a while and in the dumps, but you can get right back out of it as soon as you can let the clouds clear and you can see, okay, there is something I can do. And it may take us a little while, but don't stay in the dumps. Learn how to dig your way out and find something good to hang on to because there will always be good things. Learn to say thank you, learn to be thankful for other people, and to be positive. Just keep those things forefront. And I'm thankful God allowed me to be here with you. I just, appreciate you taking time to find out about my son and our story.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's our pleasure. I really I'm moved and inspired by who you are and what you're committed to. And it's just such an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us and sharing your story, sharing about your son, but also what you're up to. And it's just, I see the more the world gets of you, Cheryl, I think the better off we all are. And I just keep doing what you're doing and sharing your gifts because it's contagious. It's inspiring, just the compassion and love that you hold in the space, in every space. And I'm just very grateful that you're with us today. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you both very, very much. I appreciate it. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back and to share some more with us in the future.
I'd be happy to, be honored.
Cheryl, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to keep it brief because all of those, but I just want to say, I feel like you are a beautiful example of what we can become when we just choose something different.
Thank you.
So
I hope I can be here for you when you need me.
Thank you so much again, Cheryl. And one more time, everyone, if you guys want to get in touch or hear more and soon to see the artwork of Blake, go to cheryl-coaches.com and you can hear more about what Cheryl's up to and get some coaching even. I am just so happy to have you again, Cheryl. Thank you for being with us. And just tune back into everybody who's here with us. Thank you for joining us. I want to also just remind you, we want to invite you to be on this space, in this stage. We want to hear your stories, your wisdom. We want to hear what you have to share. That's why we're here, is to share, your unique gifts. That's what the space is about. And, the link at the bottom of the screen, onedaymvmt.org/share my gift. That's what we want. It's for you to share your gift with us. Maybe I'm selfish. I want to receive your gift, but I also want everyone else to receive your gift. That is why we're here. And this is part of what our mission here at One Day is, bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And that's part of what our vision is humanity rising, a connected world, each person's unique contributions, unique gifts, unique genius being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. That's why we're here. Special thank you again to Cheryl. Thank you so much for being here. And we will see you all next time. I love you all. Be safe, be well. And as always, one day is today. Bye, everybody. One day is today. One